Okay, good morning, everyone. For some reason, there's a lot of people upstairs still scurrying around. It's like something happened or something, I don't know. But welcome to Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife, Cultural Resources Senate Committee. This morning, we have bills of a different color that we're taking up. Glad to do it, though. And so let's get started, committee. Representative, would you like to come back up? Second bite at the apple. We were considering House Bill 307. And committee, you might recall from a couple of days ago, we had taken quite a bit of testimony on this bill. I'm not inclined to take any more testimony. I figured it out that sitting on the Corporations Committee, we will top 15 hours of election debate, conversation. So I think we got it. I think we understand, we're good. My colleagues beside me are up to speed as well. So Representative Pendergraft, how about some final comments on this bill? Take us home on it, remind us, anything you want. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Ken Pendergraft, House District 29. As I began, my favorite U.S. representative is fond of saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And sometimes there are questions about election integrity, as you guys are aware. And it just seems to me that if we are as open and as visible as possible, we quell a lot of, take away the ability of people to create a problem by starting rumors or by implying that there's something suspicious going on behind closed doors. So the more that we do things out in the open, the better. Precisely as we're doing here in this committee. You can watch from anywhere in the world. And having the opportunity to be there before the polls open, after they close, see how things are buttoned up. I had the opportunity myself to spend some time with the county clerk there and understand the process, and it gave me a lot more confidence in the integrity of it. And so now when people start saying, well, I don't know about this, I can say, well, I do. Let me tell you how it's done. So I think that's why this is an important bill.
So, committee, any questions of the sponsor? Representative, we're kind of catching up on this bill this morning, but thank you. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Representative, I don't know if we asked this the other day or not. I can't remember from one day to the next, but did we talk about, I know they have to have identification badges. Who provides those? Does the county clerk or who does that?
Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. To me, I'm a little different than a lot of people, I guess, but I don't see why the county clerk just couldn't have a "Hi, my name is" badge. You put it on there and put your name and poll watcher. But apparently a lot of clerks want to have things a little more controlled, and that's fine. And so the idea then was that the county clerks would provide those in the fashion that meets with the requirements of the bill. And I don't have the bill in front of me, but it adds a little bit more uniformity, I guess. And so it's been talked about, when do the people come pick those up? Of course, there needs to be some flexibility there because somebody might wake up the morning of the poll and have a chest like mine, decide they can't make it today. So I hope that answered the question.
So Representative, one of the things I took away from our conversation a couple of days ago is this idea of just more and more people being in that environment. You've been around those elections and you've served. Any concern about having enough space and just the logistics of having that many people around? Talk to me about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, I haven't seen every polling place in the state, but I have seen many.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't affect any of the places that I've been to. A lot of it, we talked about being able to have a chair, being able to sit close enough where you could actually see what was going on. I've heard stories, wasn't there personally, but I heard stories about people saying, you got to go sit over there, and from there they couldn't even really see what was going on. And that is one of the difficult things about working from the top down, as we're doing here, is you can't foresee every situation, every nook and cranny of every place, and there probably will be some exceptions where it's difficult. I don't see in most cases more than a few poll watchers there. And I have in my district visited a lot of the voting places, and it wouldn't be an issue at any of those. I can only answer for what I've seen.
Okay. Senator Boner, we're catching up with the sponsor of this bill that we carried over from 2 days ago, and we're just question and answers. Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Representative. I was looking on here and I'm wondering if we don't need language that says the poll watchers do need to be certified. I understand what you were saying about people do get sick or whatever, but I also think when people are just milling around, first of all, they're sensitive information, so I think they do need to be vetted. And second of all, the badges ensure to the everyday public that it's just not, Joe Schmo over here, watching everything going on, that they see that we do have poll watchers with, integrity and that sort of thing. So I do think there should be some sort of a cutoff, because if they're going to get some training or stuff, if we just grab somebody off the street and stick them in a chair, they're probably not going to know what to look for anyway. So they're not going to actually be helpful.
Your thoughts on that, Representative?
I have two thoughts, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that question as well. I know that in several places, county chairman or whatever, when they do the training, will train up a few extras. Somebody that kind of sits aside and could jump in the case of an issue. I believe that's done at the state level as well. So that's my first thought. And my second thought was I would really appreciate it if you would consider allowing Marty Halverson to chime in on that and to answer some of those questions. She probably forgot more about this than I'll ever know. She has trained hundreds of these people. She knows the system very well.
Well, Representative, the reason I'm cautioning on a whole bunch of testimony today, we have a couple of your colleagues that have bills up, and my desire is to take good care of our representatives today, and I can't do that if we go on about 45 minutes more on an election bill. So that's my concern, and it has nothing to do with whoever might be waiting to testify. I just decided this morning that I wanted to visit with you and get to this bill. So I hope you understand, and I hope that makes sense to everyone. If we're going to get to 3 bills this morning, we just don't have the time to spend a whole lot. But any final thoughts? Any questions up here, committee? Representative, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to close testimony on House Bill 307. What's your pleasure, committee? Moved by Senator Boner. Let's work this bill, committee. I thought, Senator Jones, you had a good couple of points.
I've got amendments for you.
And
If it's not
Senator
one that she already has.
Senator
Maybe the
Schuler,
same one.
let's get started with you, and then we'll come to Senator Jones.
Okay.
I don't think we need to go page by page. Let's just
No.
jump in and see what we'd like to see happen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose an amendment on page 6, line 15. Poll watchers, right now says shall be provided chairs at the polling places. I would like to strike shall and put may be provided chairs at the polling places, or bring their own personal chairs at the end of that sentence. That seemed to be kind of an issue people had a little issue with, and and places where there may be space constraints, I thought, you know, I know
So-
in some of the voting districts where I'm at, thinking at least a couple of them, they probably have plenty of chairs, but I can think of a couple where they might not. So I've just taken the shall out, putting may be provided, or at the very end of that sentence, after places, but, or bring their own personal chairs.
Or may bring their own personal ones. Sue, did you get that? So go to line 15, we're gonna strike the word shall and put a may in there. May be provided chairs at the polling places, or down on line 16, or may bring their own chairs.
That makes sense, Sue? Okay.
Okay? Everybody, discussion on that amendment? Any discussion? The only thing I would say, committee, is I wasn't even sure that we wanted this language in there, but I guess if we're gonna put it in the green books, we might as well give them an option. What do you think? Okay, all in favor of Senator Schuler's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Okay, that motion has carried. Senator Jones, did you have something?
I do. Page 5, line 17, I'd like to remove state because I really want to leave this at the county control. I believe that if the county hasn't chosen someone, the state officers could still call up our county chairman and offer up suggestions if we're lacking poll workers, but I really want the county to have their control.
Okay,
So
so,
it would just say a county chairman.
so we will strike the words state or on line 17, page 5. Sue, do you have that? Okay, that's the proposed amendment. Discussion? You ready for the question? All in favor of Senator Jones's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'd be an aye. Senator Boner? I thought so. Okay, so that's a 3-1 no, and that motion carries. We're back on the bill. Senator Boner.
On page 6, we're talking about certifications of poll watchers. I think the clerks testified that, the day before early voting or election day is a little tight. And so my amendment would be on page 6, line 7, strike by close of the business day before and insert the Friday before. Also have the same thing on the next line, line 8, strike by close of business the day before and insert the Friday before.
That's a good one.
Okay, does everybody understand the proposed amendment by Senator Boner? I would just ask Ms. Langford, does that seem workable?
Is that enough time? Is it 1 week?
If you wouldn't mind, I'd sure appreciate your feedback on that. Senator Boner has suggested, do you see where we are on page 6?
Yes.
Paragraph D?
I do.
Where we're trying to give some time there for,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm Mary Langford and I represent the clerks. It would be, a little more time would be better. Like a week before.
Senator Boner, would that be a friendly amendment to say a week before? or-
Well, I assume that it's a day before for a reason. Maybe the sponsor could, I understand that they, clerk said either the Friday before or a week before. I chose the Friday before because I want to just kind of strike that middle ground presumably, but if it's the same as the sponsor, it could be a week. It's,
It just strikes me, looking at the sponsor, if you have any thoughts, Representative, you're welcome to share them. I think what we're trying to drill down on is if we're going to get name badges ready, if we're going to try to, help the clerks to help these guys, it seems reasonable to give them time to do that.
So, Mr. Chairman,
go
just
ahead.
in response to that, as you get closer to Election Day, things get much busier. And particularly, they're dealing with getting equipment out. They're getting everything set up in the polling places because that doesn't happen like Monday. It happens that whole week before election time. And if you look at some of our counties, they're huge and you have to haul equipment and chairs and tables, maybe some places, those types of things. So that activity is all going on in addition to the fact that you're probably early voting in your office. And I don't know, you haven't heard in this committee, but it's been testified to that in some committee, or in some counties, they're getting 1,000 people a day early voting. Laramie County testified to that. Park County's getting 400 to 500 people a day. So that's the activity that's going on in the office. And if you could get this piece put together and have it ready to go for election day, it's just out of the way. We also understand we have the same issues with our election judges, but you also realize that things happen. Things change, changes need to be had. You're doing last minute stuff. You're working through the weekend also to get ready, but if a little bit more time is better, we would take anything really, but a little bit more time because the day before does not work.
So Senator, the Friday before would give the clerks, I think, Monday on a Tuesday election, right?
And Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, the weekend. You got the weekend too, but, so Representative Pendergraft, any heartburn on your part if we were to extend and say, let's let the clerks know a week in advance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Or
It's not
Friday.
a hill to die on in my book, but that's precisely why I suggest keeping it real simple with the hello, my name is stickers on there, because there are a lot of changes that happen at the last minute, and everybody is very busy at that last minute. And so the simpler and yet still get the job done, I think the better. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have one quick comment on Senator Jones's amendment.
Sure,
Thank
I'll
you.
grant you that, absolutely.
The reason we had state in there is there are two. Some parties, in fact, most of the parties don't have a county chairman in every place. And so that allows the state chairman or the state party to be able to fill in a gap like that should they see a need to. And that's why we kept the state in there and tried to keep it there. And the other one was there are some county party chairmen who are a little reluctant to actually appoint somebody. I think some of them, I can't say why. And so we, and I'd say we by the state party as well, really felt like it was a good thing to leave state in there so that they could cover the gaps whenever they needed to.
Yeah, we understand. Thank you, Representative. I appreciate your thoughts too on and Ms. Langford, thank you.
You're welcome.
That gives us a little feedback, and the amendment on the floor right now, committee, is to move this to the Friday before the election. Senator Boner, Senator Hicks just got here. Would you mind sharing your amendment again, just to walk us in it?
Yeah, so
through
page
it.
6 on line 7, delete by close of business the day before and insert the Friday before. And same thing on lines 8 and 9, delete by close of business the day before, insert the Friday before. So it gives the clerks a little bit more time.
Any other discussion? Senator Hicks, are you caught up with us on page 6? We did a little amending to the chair language down on 15 through 17, Senator Hicks, and indicated that people can bring their own chairs too. Okay, so all in favor of Senator Boner's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no?
No.
I'm a no. Senator Hicks, were you an aye on that one?
Yeah.
3-2, that passes. That amendment carries. We are now Friday before the election.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Jones.
can I make amendment to that amendment and change it to the week before for both of those spots on page 6 on line 7 and line 9? They both would read the week before.
Okay, move to change that language once again. Discussion. Okay, all in favor of Senator Jones's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no?
No.
Okay, that amendment has passed. We are now at a week before the election. Anything further, committee? Anything further on 307?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
and this follow-up discussion, and I'm not gonna run a proposed amendment right now. It's just the structure when we get to page 5. And this is where the state or county chairman of a political party may designate another certified poll watcher. If this bill makes it, I'm just gonna bring a committee of the whole, and this is for everybody. It's basically gonna clean that up and say, at first it's the county chairman's, and in absence of the county chairman designating them the state poll. Because the way it right is, you could have both of them. And it creates a conflict, and I don't think that's the intent. Mr. Chairman, I'm not gonna amend that right now, see what happens, but I'll bring that as a committee of the whole.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. We did amend that before you got here and we struck the, but certainly you may spot something up on the floor and we may revisit that. Appreciate it, Senator. We have, we strike the word state on line 17. We struck state or.
Okay.
And so now it says a county chairman. Okay, if you ready for the question, committee? Sue, let's take roll on House Bill 307.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on House Bill 307 engrossed as amended. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Hicks.
Aye.
Senator Jones.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
No.
Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, House Bill 307 will make its way to the Senate. Representative Pendergraft, thank you for being here. Have a good day out there. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 200. Representative Webb, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good to see you again.
It's good to see you. So for those of you who don't know me, or maybe don't know a whole lot about me, my name's Joe Webb. I represent House District 19, which is the eastern part of Uintah County and the southern part of Uintah County and the sliver of Evanston. And I appreciate your time being able to listen to this bill as I present it. And I will try not to take too much of your time. So
Well, thank you, Representative. We're trying our best to get through 2 more bills here today, so glad to have you.
Okay.
I know you know this senator beside me here, apparently.
I do know her.
All right.
So, yeah. So.
Take it away, Representative, and walk us through House Bill 200.
Okay. This bill, you may have heard of it because it had some controversy at first. We did strip out those, what I would call those more controversial things before this bill was even heard in the, on the House side committee. So I think we have a good bill here. I think that it is cognizant of parental rights, but it also respects the schools and the school personnel. And some of this will seem familiar to you because this bill, it actually tries to plug some holes in Senate File 9, which was passed last year. And so if you can kind of recall some of the, or if you recall that bill. As I said, the intent of House Bill 200 is an attempt to plug some holes in Wyoming Statute 21-3-135, which was put into place last year after Senate File 9 was passed by the legislature. This bill further defines some items in the existing laws. It adds some definitions and adds a few components concerning attendance at assemblies or trainings and the use of pronouns. So we'll walk through the bill a little bit. Page 2, lines 11 and 12, we add the term including school district personnel to be more definitive. On lines 17 through 20, we get more definitive as to when parents must be notified when the emotional, physical, or health of their student or their child changes. This also extends the time beyond regular school hours to while the student is engaged in an activity, extracurricular activity, event, program, or function where the school district or where school district personnel are responsible for the the student regardless of location. Once again, we're just trying to be more encompassing to make sure all areas are covered there. You might want to remember that, that phrase there, because you're going to hear it 2 more times or see it 2 more times. On page 3, line 8, we again become more definitive and specify that no school policy is to be developed that discourages school district personnel from notifying a parent during the hours of when the student is involved in a school function regardless of location, referring back to that phrase up above. Also on page 3, lines 22 and 23, we've added diversity, equity, or inclusion to the items in existing law that the school must receive written or electronic permission from the parent before their student can participate. On page 4, excuse me, lines 2 through 9 states that schools must notify the student's parent at least 5 days before a student can participate in an activity or assembly that addresses sexual orientation, gender identity, or diversity, equity, or inclusion, and provides for an option for the parent to opt their student out of an activity or assembly. Lines 11 through 15 has districts adopt a policy whereby school district personnel and students are not required to refer to a student using the student's preferred pronoun if the pronoun does not align with the student's biological sex. And then on lines 17 through 21, districts are to adopt a policy that allows school district personnel to withdraw or opt out of mandatory classes or trainings involving diversity, equity, or inclusion. Turning to page 5, lines 12 through 16, we again see the clause that includes the times when a student is engaged in a school activity regardless of location. On page 5, also line 23, and on to page 6, lines 1 and 2, we see the definition of abuse has been deleted, but that definition is simply moved to a new section that we will discuss shortly. On page 6, lines 4 through 14 requires at the beginning of the 2025-2026 school year, each district shall make available to parents and publish on the school website all written policies, practices, and procedures. It goes on to say that if policies or procedures are added or changed during the school year, that those policies must be made available to parents and updated on the school website within 30 days. Beginning on page 6, lines 16 through the end of page 9 are the definitions, like we just talked about a minute ago, with abuse. And then lastly, on page 10, line 2 sets an effective date for this bill to take effect should it pass the legislature. As stated earlier, this bill further defines or clarifies some items that in the existing law, and it adds the 3 components concerning attendance at assemblies or trainings and the use of pronouns. We feel like that we have a good bill. We feel like we've had good input, made the amendments that we've needed to. And having said that, I would stand for any questions.
Okay, Representative Webb, nice job. Questions, committee of the bringer of the bill? Any questions of the sponsor? Let's go to Senator Boner and then back to Senator Schuler.
So just a general question, I guess, what will, could you point to the parts of the bill that would change current practices in the state? And in particular, page 6, where you have to make available the policies on the website. Are you aware of any districts that don't do this already, or maybe even don't have a website? Just a little bit more information about how the requirements of this bill comport with what's actually happening on the ground.
Representative, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Boner. My understanding with this is that school districts are not compelled to put those things up on the website. I think many of them do voluntarily, which is good, but we want to make sure that parents have access to those policies and procedures of the school district so that they are informed.
Okay, Senator Schuler.
Actually, that was the question I was going to ask. I do have a couple of others, though.
Senator Schuler, go ahead.
I guess great minds think alike. So Senator Boner.
Oh, no question about that. We were thinking the same thing, yeah.
So, it appears that, I was gonna actually go back and look at the policy we passed last year to see, it seems as though we're a little more concerned with DEI on this versus last year, which we didn't really, I don't think we included that. The 5 days before, they have an assembly, I think it's a good fix. I think it's gonna be kind of tough sometimes. I know they have guest speakers come into some of these assemblies. I'm sure they vet them. I'm positive they do. The fact that they might address something that maybe wasn't on their list of things they were supposed to talk about. Let's say you had a county person come in to talk about, I don't know, let's just say something off the topic, voting. And then they get into something that might affect this. Do you see an issue there where, okay, well, the school district didn't know, maybe they were gonna do this, and now this person talked a little bit about something that might, sexual orientation or equity, or I don't know, pick something. Do you see that as being an issue for the school district, being able to understand and know completely that every person that comes in and does an assembly might not venture into those areas, or do you feel like that might be covered the way it is?
Representative, top of page 4, I think is where the good senators landed
Thank you.
with that one.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, good question, Senator Schuler. I have, okay, first of all, like you mentioned, I believe that any presenter is vetted, should be vetted. Principal meets with them beforehand. I have faith and trust in principals that they would steer those conversations back into the bounds of where they needed to be, should they feel like that those discussions start straying off into areas that would violate the policy.
I think that's Senator, just to kind of jump in, that could literally be one of us. I mean, we could step out of bounds and say something about legislation that we were fighting over down in Cheyenne or whatever. All of us have been invited to come into the school, and for them to predict 5 days in advance what I'm going to say, that'd be impossible. Does that make sense?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it
Representative?
does. And that's where I think that the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion that's within the bill, that would be the sideboards, if you wanted to put it that way, of what the principal would need to make sure that conversation stays within that area.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead,
Oh,
Senator
I was
Schuler.
just gonna follow up on that same page.
Absolutely.
Romanet 7, I actually think that's a really good catch there. And I don't know if Senate File 9, again, I should have looked at it to see. I know that that's kind of been an issue in a few places I've heard, where, there was an issue where, in fact, I actually heard this from a teacher, that a parent came in and a student teacher, or excuse me, it was in a parent-teacher conference, and the parent wanted to know why the teacher wasn't calling this person by a different name. And the teacher told me, they said, well, the student didn't ask me to call them by that. This is the name that's on the roll is this. And basically this parent wanted the teacher to it was, I guess, within her rights to ask for that, but the student didn't want to do that. So I think that's kind of the issue with that section on page 4, 11 through 15. I think it's good to have it in there, but I think we've got to maybe clarify a lot of those things, with the pronoun issue, and decide, I guess the parent has the right to say that, but if the student doesn't want them to call them by a different pronoun, are they required to? There's so many questions that I get asked about that, so can you clarify that at all?
Representative, you want to jump in on that?
well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the parent, in my opinion, the parent needs to know what's going on with the student. And if the parent wasn't aware in this situation where, what was going on in the student's life, that they wanted a different pronoun, the parent can't address, to me, can't address that situation for the well-being of the child. The parent has the responsibility of raising that child. So I like the conversation that, there's transparency, there's openness. As was said previously, that there's some sunshine on what's going on. So we can try to address the things that are going on, particularly with our young people in school during these trying times of their lives as they're growing up.
Okay, further questions? Senator Jones?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, we've had several other parental rights bills, and I feel like some of them cover some things that this one doesn't, like for an assembly, if it's a historical figure or something like that, that could qualify as going against the DEI policy. And I know that correct me if I'm wrong, senators, but I feel like we've carved out some things on some of these other bills that still give the right to celebrate some of our historical figures and some of the things that have gone wrong, but also could go against what you have written in here for your assemblies.
So any concern, Representative, over that sort of thing? Just the teaching of historical documents or the reference that Senator Jones just made. Do you want to weigh in on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Senator Jones. If you look at the definition, and we'll take diversity, equity, and inclusion, on page 7, you'll notice that it means any program or activity or policy that promotes discriminating or for or against a person on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, or religion. And I won't read the next one. You can kind of see it there. Topics can be discussed. We cannot disparage one group over another. We can't promote one group or put one group below another. We can address the situation, but we can't discriminate, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Questions, committee? Okay. Senator Boner.
Going back to that, I guess, original question or concern on the top page 4, line 5, would it be okay? I mean, if we insert between that and addresses, insert plans too? Frankly, I think it's obvious that, if you're asking for permission 5 days ahead of time, that the concern about, responding to a question or going off script would be covered. But if we need a belt and suspenders with that, would you be okay with that, Representative?
Representative, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Senator Bonner, where exactly? I just turned to
sorry.
my page.
Page 4, line 5. Insert between that or after that, plans to. So the guest speaker presentation that plans to address, and I suppose you have to take off the S on address. Would that be okay?
Senator, I don't see any problem with that.
Thank you.
Anything else for the representative? Okay, Representative, I hope you can stick around, and we reserve the right to ask you a question later if we come to it. We want to get to some other testimony. And
Okay, I will be here. Thank
do
you.
we have anybody here from the Department of Education? I'd like to get to agencies first. Okay, anyone else who'd like to come forward and testify on this bill? Please come forward. Welcome. This late in the session, you know the routine. You got to get a green light, and then you got to tell us who you are for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members. My name is Patricia McCoy, and I'm the Chapter Chair of Moms for Liberty of Laramie County. I'm here on behalf of all 5 chapters of Moms for Liberty in Wyoming in support of this bill. As a parent who's had their rights violated multiple times with multiple children here in Laramie County in the schools, I'm a huge advocate for this bill. Schools are simply being asked to do what any business would consider basic common customer service: keep your clients informed. The pushback on this bill, to me, quite frankly, is perplexing. We're not asking teachers to move mountains. We're asking them to send an email, make a phone call, and post curriculum online. In an age where teachers can instantly post classroom photos to school social media accounts and send mass text messages about snow days, are we really pretending it's super burdensome to let parents know what their children are learning? Let's talk about the so-called burdensome requirements. 1 day's notice before certain instruction, 5 days' notice for assemblies, posting curriculum materials online, and updating parents about significant changes. That's it. That's all we're asking for. They're claiming that this is going to be too difficult, but every teacher I know already has lesson plans. Every school already has a website set up, and each district already has email and phone systems in place. We don't need to invent new technology here. We're just asking them to hit send and give us the information. Now, I've heard concerns about teachable moments, but let's be honest, this bill doesn't prevent genuine teachable moments about math, science, literature, or history. It prevents surprise lessons on controversial social issues that belong in the family's domain. There's a world of difference between explaining why the sky is blue and delving into complex social ideologies without parental knowledge. And here's what's really interesting. Research has shown that when parent involvement is the biggest predictor of student success. So if parent involvement is the biggest predictor of student success, why would teachers and schools not want to partner with us? Why would they not want us to be involved in our children's education? Let's address the elephant in the room, though. If you're opposed to telling parents what you're teaching their children, you need to ask yourself why. They're meant to be partners in education, not replacement parents. The only logical conclusion is that informed, involved parents make education more effective, not less. The reality is this bill makes everyone's job easier in the long run. Teachers get more engaged parents who can support learning at home. Parents can better help with homework because they know what's being taught. Students benefit from consistency between home and school. Administrators have clear guidelines for parental communication. Districts have protection from liability through clear documentation. It's basic respect for parental rights. And let's be honest, if a school can track attendance, manage lunch accounts, do bus routes, and be able to handle all of those things, then why can they not be able to give us basic information on what our children will be learning? To those claiming that this creates extra work, I ask, aren't you already planning what you're teaching? Aren't you already creating these materials? Aren't they already using the email and the school websites? All we're asking is that what you're already doing with the people who have both the right and responsibility to know, the parents, share it with them. The bottom line for House Bill 200 is that it isn't asking for anything extraordinary. It's simply requiring schools to stay in their lane and respect the fundamental rights of parents to direct their children's upbringing. If that seems controversial, perhaps we need to ask ourselves why. I thank you for your time, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Excuse me, my name is Janet Farmer. I am the Health Services Director for Laramie County School District Number 1, which means I supervise the school nurses, but I'm not here in that role. I also am the Wyoming Director to the National Association for School Nurses. So in that role, I represent school nurses across Wyoming. So we have a couple of concerns with this bill. First of all, I want to point out that school nurses absolutely are for parent rights. We crave that support from parents and that involvement from parents. When we get it, when we have that support, it makes for a much better education for the students, so that we can make sure that they're healthy and that they're in school and that they can learn to the best of their ability. The concerns that school nurses specifically, but any other group of staff in schools have concerns with this bill is specifically the language that the bringer spoke about that's in the bill several times. The first point is during school hours. The bill as it stands right now says as soon as practicable, and we're adding during school hours, and that just may not be realistic. There are many, many times where nurses that I speak for, but others, counselors, principals, any group actually, are taking care of things, and it's not during school hours. They're staying later, they're finishing their documentation up until 3, 4, 6 o'clock at night. So adding that language in there specifically would mean that they would be violating the bill. because those notifications may not go out until after the school day is over. I'm not good at analogies, but my only analogy that I could come up with was for you all as state representatives, if you were required to send a notification to all of your constituents daily, that might be feasible if it's electronic. But if it's required to be done by a certain time of day, say 4 o'clock, and you're still working here until 6 or 8 or 10 o'clock at night, then you're breaking the law. So that's the first concern we have. The second one is also in that paragraph when it talks about the extracurricular activities and the notifications needed there. I am very confident that if a student is injured after school hours at any kind of these events, that someone is calling those parents. My concern is if it's deemed maybe not significant, maybe a jammed finger at a football game, that could be significant, it may not. A skinned knee at an elementary field trip. This is requiring that someone make that call to that parent or guardian. I don't disagree that parents need to be notified. The question that we have is, who's going to do that notification? You have a coach on the sideline who's responsible for monitoring the activity in that game. Are they going to do it? Is the teacher on the field trip going to do it? We have parent chaperones that go on these trips. Are we going to ask them to do it even though they're not district employees and shouldn't have access to that information? So those are big concerns on how do we realistically make that happen? A couple of other concerns that I came up with in the middle of the night, actually. My prior role before I was the coordinator, I actually worked at a high school. Many, many times when seeing students in the nurse's office, a student comes in, they have a headache, we give them some Tylenol, we have parent permission for that. We say, okay, you need to let your mom know, you need to let your dad know that you were here, that we did this. Sure, yeah, okay. Or we give them the option. Do you want to let your parent know or do you want me to call them? I'll let them know. This takes that away. This says the school district employee has to do that notification. So we're taking away that option for the student to be more involved in their care. That's one other concern. And the other concern, just kind of anecdotally, there was discussion about on page 4, lines 11 through 15, the discussion of not requiring school district personnel to use a preferred pronoun. This is a parental rights bill. So what if the parent wants that student to use a different parent pronoun? Basically, this language would say the school district doesn't have to do that. So we're actually taking that right away from the parent in a parental rights bill. That's how I interpret that understanding. Those were my concerns. I would stand for any questions.
Committee questions for our Laramie County student nurse. Appreciate all the work you do at the national level. That's terrific. So that last point that you bring up is interesting to me because I wonder about the protection from a HIPAA standpoint. When does that kick in? Does a student have to be an adult before you can be kind of prohibited from sharing information? I'm trying to get arms around that one.
Chairman Landon, school nurses, all school nurses work under FERPA. We don't work under HIPAA. So we only work with HIPAA when we're talking to an outside agency, like a clinic or a doctor's office. So we're completely under FERPA. So anything that happens in school, just like with education or behaviors, would fall under that realm and parents would have that access unless the student is 18, and then we only give information to the student.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any further testimony on this bill? Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brian Farmer. I'm representing Wyoming School Boards Association, speaking in opposition to the bill. Mr. Chairman, I believe just as far as a general comment, just don't think that the bill is needed at this time. The legislature passed comprehensive legislation just last session. And Mr. Chairman, our school districts had a very short window to pass policies. And I say short window because an important thing to know about policy is that in order to adhere to the Wyoming Administrative Procedures Act, you have to walk backward from the implementation date. So we had to work really hard to implement policies by July 1st that addressed a whole bunch of things. And we're in our first year now of the implementation of those policies. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know of any notion that the policies in place aren't working, that the policies in place aren't providing that good communication between parents and districts, and much of that communication that really already existed before policy. The policies in place now are there to ensure that it's happening in a certain better way. But Mr. Chairman, I think our lesson from last year that we learned is that words matter. When we looked at last year's policy, didn't disagree in concept with certain things, but words matter. So Mr. Chairman, when you go to page 2 of your bill and you look at, let's just say lines 14 through 17, which are not at stake in this bill, but last year we said that the school district had to adopt a policy to notify a student's parent or guardian as soon as practicable if there's a change in a student's educational, physical, mental, or emotional health or well-being. Anybody who's walked in any junior high in the world knows that every junior high kid has a change in their emotional well-being on a daily basis. So what exactly does the policy require? So we've become a little bit picky about words, and I'll apologize because I know that some of my testimony is going to sound nitpicky, but that's sort of from the lessons learned. And so, Mr. Chairman, on that very page, page 2, line 11 through 12, a school district can only act through its personnel. So that language is just, again, not needed. It's unnecessary. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to maybe, I'm going to jump around in concept, but in order to move through the bill page by page. Mr. Chairman, as we get to page number 3, I think a lot of the language in this bill is really addressing on line 23 the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Mr. Chairman, there are at least 2 other pieces of legislation this year that are addressing these same topics, and somewhat in different ways, somewhat in the same way, conceptually all the same, but when we get to the specific words, that's going to matter a little bit again. Mr. Chairman, on page 4, lines 2 through 9, you've already talked about some of the challenges of this language. What is the realistic implementation of this? We don't have teachers that are going to necessarily know 5 days in advance of a guest speaker. If we have, let's say that we have a Secretary of Education, a U.S. Secretary of Education, if Ms. McMahon comes through Wyoming and is traveling through, she wouldn't be able to speak at an assembly if we didn't have a 5-day notice in advance of her visit to the state. And so thinking about some of the realistic implementation of that, I won't repeat the discussion that you've already had because I think you've already addressed some of the practicality and Senator Boner talking about what's planned versus, Mr. Chairman, your discussion of where speakers sometimes go in different directions. Mr. Chairman, I think on lines 11 through 15, Ms. Farmer, who has a wonderful last name but happens not to be a relation, is brought up a good point of what about when a parent has a preference.
of pronouns. Is there a conflict here in that instance? Mr. Chairman, lines 17 through 21 is specifically addressing school district personnel and their ability to opt out of mandatory trainings. And I'm going to jump ahead because here is where the definition of DEI becomes really important. So, Mr. Chairman, if we go ahead to page 7, lines 4 really through 14, it defines DEI, or I guess through 17 really, 16, 17, it defines DEI. But I want to focus specifically on 7 through 9. Diversity, equity, and inclusion means any program, activity, or policy that promotes discriminating for or against a person on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, or religion. So when we talk about prohibited discrimination, there are some mandatory trainings, such as under Title IX, that says it is against the law to discriminate on the basis of sex. And so staff have to have a mandatory training that says you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. That would be in violation of this definition of DEI. It says they get to opt out of a training that's prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sex, but it's a mandatory training. So if they opt out, then we have violated the requirement that staff receive that training under Title IX. Mr. Chairman, I want to move through the bill again to page 6, talking about lines.
Senator Boner has a question. Mr. Farmer, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so
but,
just
go
a
ahead,
little bit more
Senator.
information on the definition of DEI. It's very clear that you can't discriminate on the basis of, race, color, sex, national origin. How does that conflict with the Title IX training exactly? So you're not allowed to discriminate, right? That's what.
So it says you can't have any program, activity, or policy that promotes discriminating for or against a person on the basis of race.
Right.
And so Title IX says you can't discriminate on the basis of race, on the basis of sex.
Okay.
And so to have the policy that says you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, and then because we're teaching that in a training, it is a violation of this policy. It says you cannot have a policy that promotes discriminating for or against a person on the basis of sex. So you're discriminating against, for or against the person on the basis of sex. You can't have that policy.
I think the point, Senator, is that personnel can opt out of some of this training that is essentially required. Title IX training is required at the federal level if you're going to receive any federal funding. But go ahead, Mr. Farmer.
Mr.
if you-
Chairman, I'm still,
Senator-
it's okay.
Senator-
I'm still
Senator-
confused because I'm assuming that Title IX training does not require that you discriminate, right? It seems like the definition of DEI is consistent, I hope, is consistent with the Title IX training, and that they agree that you should not be discriminating based on those immutable characteristics. Or is there, what's the inconsistency? I'm not following you.
Mr. Farmer? go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, I think it is the plain language meaning of discrimination, which means to differentiate on the basis of. I think oftentimes we have a connotative association that discrimination is negative treatment of a person. But discrimination in its plain meaning is to treat differently on the basis of. And so when the law says you cannot treat differently on the basis of sex, then we are having a policy that promotes that you cannot do that. And so that's where we feel that there is problem in the language. The policy promotes the prohibition of discrimination. And the language says that you cannot promote discriminating for or against. And so you're here in promoting the prohibition on discrimination.
Follow up, Senator Boner? Go ahead. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Farmer, you know, it's customary when you identify an issue or a concern that you also bring a solution to that. So what's your suggested language for that to address your concern? Or is it just to express your concern? And, you know, when we work legislation, we try to take these things, take a public input and stuff to identify issues and then not come up with a solution, I don't think is being productive. And just, you know, if you go through these, you know, it'd be nice that you offer some solution to those issues that you're highlighting and just instead of pointing out issues.
Good point, Senator, but I have a hunch that we probably will have a suggested amendment or two. But in the meantime, if you want to continue, Mr. Farmer, with your comments, and then if you do have suggested amendments, anyone in the room is welcome to make them, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, Mr. Chairman, what I'm trying to do is illustrate why I don't believe that this legislation should be passed, not suggesting that this legislation should be passed with different language. Mr. Chairman, I would submit that the definitions that are in Senate File 103 or House Bill 147 are better than the language found in this bill. Mr. Chairman, just two last points. One is on page 6, line 4 through 14, to say, you asked a question about school districts, and do school districts publish their policies on the internet? Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you that all 48 Wyoming school districts do publish all of their policies on their websites. That is available on all websites. And Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to have a similar disagreement or a similar misunderstanding with regard to my final point, which is, again, in regard to the definition of prohibiting discrimination for or against something. And the last is, if you say that we can't have a policy that prohibits discriminating for the basis of sex, our concern is, does that prohibit having a policy that says boys can only go to boys' bathrooms? It's prohibiting making a differentiation in favor of a particular category.
Okay, questions for Mr. Farmer? Go ahead, Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Farmer, I just have a question. I just did a little quick Google search on Title IX to go back to that subject. And I am wondering, have you guys heard anything about our new administration change, presidential, and some of the new DEI programs? Do you expect Title IX is going to change at all? Because I agree with what you're saying. It looks like right here that there is protection for transgender students who don't conform to gender stereotypes. So it does sound like that would definitely be something that could be a conversation and could violate this policy. Do you expect for any changes to be coming down over Title IX at all?
Go ahead, Mr. Farmer.
Mr. Chairman, in fact, that has already happened. In January, a federal court invalidated the Biden administration Title IX rules, which did include gender ideology, moving it back to the 2020 Title IX rules, which still prohibit discrimination or harassment on the basis of sex. And so that's why I tried to tailor my discussion about the different treatment on the basis of sex as opposed to gender ideology, which is no longer under that. Mr. Chairman, the question also referenced the administration's changes with rules, regulations, and law. And certainly the administration has issued executive orders with regard to DEI, to the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those are currently stayed by federal judge and pending litigation. There have been about 22 states that have filed suit with regard to that particular executive order. And so that one is one that will be resolved by the courts. Specifically, what that executive order did is it tied to federal funds for education and required states to ensure the removal of diversity, equity, inclusion in educational programs in order to receive those federal funds. So if that carries through, then federal law prohibits diversity, equity, inclusion pursuant to definitions either in that executive order or as defined by the court.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen, Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. I won't reiterate a lot of the points. There have been some great points that both Brian and Janet Farmer have made. We share a lot of those same concerns. I do want to start by addressing that out of all of the 6,000 teachers that we represent, the conversations that I have had with them, there is not one of them that does not value and desires parent input and engagement in their students' process. We do know that our students do a lot better when parents engage. So our association and our teachers within our association welcome that partnership. We look forward to building and growing that partnership. So I just want to be able to address that. Really briefly, the WEA stands in opposition to this bill, so I would also like to reiterate that our position is not to attempt to fix and pass a bill, but the bill is not necessary and does not need to move forward. I will just say ditto to a lot of the comments that Mr. Farmer presented in terms of the unnecessary means of this bill. I do want to echo the concerns of the during the school hours language. Again, this is something that I have heard from a number of our educators. If you think about what a teacher's day looks like, and especially in some of those schools where they've got classrooms that have 20+ students in, and something happens, there is very little time within that during school hours to make that notification, given everything else that they have to take care of. The language that was originally there as soon as practicable was far more functional. The 5 days, again, reiterating the concern, you know, the hypothetical of our new Department of Education secretary coming through, aside from a hypothetical, this is actually what is happening on the ground, and what I have heard from our educators is we typically don't have that many days' notice, and sometimes we get some folks that do come through, or we have opportunities that present themselves very shortly, and we make that adaptation. So again, that piece raises some practical issues. I think, again, regarding the language on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that there needs to be some clarity. There has been a lot of talk at the national level as well as within the state about what that means. I think first and foremost, it's important to realize that is an organizational framework. It's not a lesson plan, it's not a curriculum, and it's nowhere in our standards. So at the K through 12 level, we're not teaching diversity, equity, inclusion. The idea of, we absolutely support the idea that you don't want to discriminate on the basis of sex, race, class, religion. Those prohibitions, we absolutely agree with. And those prohibitions are already found in our state and U.S. Constitution. I understand that there might be some desire to craft a state language that reflects that. But again, getting back to the concerns that the language is problematic in those terms, again, leads to the conclusion that through and through, and given all of these issues, we would ask that the bill not move forward. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Senator Jones.
I raised my hand like I was in school there.
Well, we are talking school. That's what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mullen, I have a question. On page 2, it talks about notifying students' parents and a change in like their physical, mental, emotional health or sort of thing like that. And I was just trying to think, and it says where school district personnel are responsible for the students regardless of location. And I'm thinking about sports events. It's not during school hours. The students come, possibly a football game, soccer game, whatever it might be. Kids are goofy, they're doing strange things. Sometimes they're acting strange. are we putting undue liability on some of our teachers and our athletic directors and things that, because I do think there is a little level of responsibility. They're trying to control the crowd. But I feel like now we've added another layer, like any kid that's acting goofy or doing something they probably shouldn't be doing, we have to go find every single parent. So I almost think we wouldn't be having any events then, because, you know, we know what kids are doing on their off time. They're enjoying themselves and aren't always on their best behavior. So what are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Mr. Mullen.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Jones, it's a great question and it's a valid concern. It muddies the waters for sure, especially when it comes to those type of events, especially given the language of during school hours, right? So we also think of some of those extracurricular events, field trips, yeah, that's going to be during the school day. But to your point, we have so many events that happen after school hours, and with the language that it is in there, it does muddy the water. And what we saw last year, and I think that districts did a good job addressing the legislation that was passed. However, there was significant concern, like when areas become muddied, when there becomes this, well, what does this mean for us in implementation, in practicality? It makes it difficult to craft policies, and it makes it difficult for educators where they're like, well, I mean, where do I stand on this? What is the necessity? And when you start thinking about that, if a teacher's time during their day, if that is the pressing concern instead of, I've got this class that I need to teach, and I have to individualize my lesson for each one of these students. I've got to take care of this student over here, and I've got this barn burning over here. We're now also taking away from those educators' pressing needs to take care of that classroom while muddying those waters.
Any other questions for Mr. Mullen? Okay, we're going to keep moving along. Appreciate you, Mr. Mullen. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Tina Clifford, and I'm from Fremont County, and I would like to urge your support on this bill. I became a business educator, it's been a little over 30 years ago, and my goodness, how education has changed in that time. I'm sitting here listening to testimony, and I haven't been in the classroom for about 15 years, but oh my goodness, things are very different. And when I was in the classroom, we took care of the kids, and we worked, to try to protect the kids. And if I needed to get a hold of the parents to let them know what we were doing, I would do that, because that was my job, was to work with the parents. My job was to teach these kids and to care for these kids. And a lot of the testimony that I've heard today is, well, teachers can't do this and they can't do that. It's what happened to education? Where are we at? And I'm shocked, and I'm very sad, because I loved my kids. I loved teaching. I loved being in the classroom. And it was worth the work, and it was hard. It was a very hard job, but it was worth it. And I just am very sad. On page 4, everybody's talking about, the 5 days, giving 5 days notice, lines 2 through 9, about an assembly. And what if somebody comes, they don't have enough time? Well, the language in the bill says if they're going to be speaking on particular topics. And I would hope that an education secretary wouldn't want to come in and talk about gender identity with children, because that's not appropriate. We used to have lines, and we used to have boundaries and things that were not, excuse me, not okay to talk about with kids. And now we're arguing about this. And I just, let's do what we need to do to protect these kids and try to restore education to what used to be good. And now we're just doing all these gymnastics to be able to try to, I don't know. But I would urge you to support this bill and let it be heard on the Senate floor. And let's see if we can improve some parental rights and let these parents be able to have a bigger window and a bigger say into what's going on in their kids' education. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Clifford, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming all the way from Fremont County. Anyone else? Let's go to the representative.
Yeah, raise your hand, that one works.
Yeah, well, Representative, I want to apologize. I didn't realize you wanted to testify on this, and you should have been first.
Mr.
So
Chairman, I just wanted to see how a well-oiled machine works here in this
Yeah,
committee.
boy, it's squeaking a little bit late in the day, late in the session, right? So, but, welcome. No.
Good
it's
morning,
to see you,
Mr. Chairman
Representative.
and members of the committee.
And by the way, we're in committee, and we're all equal in committee, and that's why I referred to the representative as representative, but obviously he's part of our leadership on the other side. So go ahead,
Thank
Representative.
you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is Scott Heiner. I'm from Senate District 18 in Southwest Wyoming. We passed a very good bill on parental rights last year, and I say that because one of your committee members wrote that bill. And it was transformational to bring increased protection for our children and rights for parents to get them more involved in education. As we've heard in testimony, the more parents are involved, the better the education is and the outcome is better for the children. As you all are aware, Mr. Chairman, we try to do our best when we pass a bill. But almost every time we have to come back and plug some holes in the dike that we find afterwards that we missed. Not intentionally, but we find out that there's some things to make it better. That's what we found with the parental rights bill that was passed last year. There's just a couple of little leaks in the dike we want to put our fingers in. One of them is, well, two of them are on page 2, where we included district personnel. We found that some personnel that may be substitute teachers or contractors, they didn't feel like they need to adhere to the same policies. And so we wanted to be more inclusive of those people that come in contact with our children to make them aware that they too should be able to follow these rights. The second one is on page 2 is extracurricular activities. We missed that in last year's bill. When our students go on speech and debate trips or football trips, they are still under the responsible care of the school district. And so this kind of extends that not only during school hours, but during those activities where they may be traveling for extracurricular activities, such that they still need chaperones, they need to be protected, and if anything changes, parents need to be notified. Now, we've heard some testimony today about immediate notification. Nowhere in here does it say immediate notification. On line 15 on page 2, it says as soon as practicable. So if something happens, it doesn't require immediate, it just says as soon as you can. You don't have to, during a football game, all of a sudden stop the game so you can call a parent if someone gets hurt. But you should get the parent notified as soon as you can. So that has not changed. There is no immediate need for a teacher to stop the classroom and go out and call a parent. It's still as soon as practicable. Now, there's,
So,
yes, Mr.
Representative,
Chairman.
so real quick, I guess the confusion that I'm kind of having in that language that you're at right there, I wonder about during school hours and I wonder why we wouldn't want to consider just striking that language, just to say the emotional health, well-being while a student is engaged in an activity. Because you're right, in that paragraph, it says as soon as practicable. But I think what's confusing a little bit is whenever it's practicable, but during school hours. I think we do contact parents all the time. I raised 3 of them and they were contacting me in the evening, once in a while. But we made it through. What do you think about that language right there?
Mr. Chairman, this legislation goes through 9 different levels of review. This is one of them. And that, as we improve it each time, we come out with a better product. So our emphasis here is to include extracurricular activities. We're already doing it during school hours. So yes, I think that would help if we can clarify that language.
Okay, thank you for letting me interrupt. Please continue.
No, that's fine. The other thing that I want to point out is if what we're trying to restrict is teacher-led discussion about gender identity. Now, if it's a student-led discussion, we don't want to put sideboards there so that if a student wants to have a conversation with a counselor or a nurse or a teacher about some things that they're bothering them, we don't want the school district personnel to say, oh, I can't talk to you about that. But if it's student-led, we don't want to restrict that, because sometimes students need to be able to talk, and we don't want to prohibit that. And the final thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The final thing I want to say is we heard that they're not teaching DEI right now. So why the opposition to say in here that you shouldn't promote DEI? If they're not doing it, why oppose the language that's in the bill to say you shouldn't do that? So what this is just improving upon the good senator's bill that she wrote last year. And I think that was a great bill that she did. And I think it really helped parents. I've had a lot of feedback, but we found during this past year, since that time, this came from some issues that happened, not because we just dreamt up some new issues. It's because something happened. And we here in the legislature, it seems like we're very reactionary. We don't dream up problems. We try to respond to problems when they happen and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's what we're trying to do with this bill, is respond to something that happened. Put our finger in the dike at a couple little places, but Senator Schuler's bill is still a very good bill, and I want to stress that.
Okay, thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Representative. Really appreciate you being here this morning. Thanks. We're going to try to finish up this bill. I want to get to my good friend over here, Representative's been really patient. We want to get to that next bill also.
He's bigger than I am, too.
But now we do have anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? I don't want to cut that short, but I think we have one person online who wants to testify. I'm going to ask whoever it is to please be as brief as you can, because we've got work to do on another bill after this one. I think we're looking for Ms. Pavey. Is that right? Ms.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair and committee. My name is Laura Pavey, and I will be very brief. I won't make you have to listen to my speech. This is a bill that parents are asking for. Oh, sorry. I'll start my video. I apologize. This is a bill that parents are asking for. This is a bill that was heard from a lot of concerned citizens when they were out on the campaign trail. As teachers and school board members have associations, our representatives are you great people up at the Capitol. And so this is the way that we get our voice to be heard, is through asking for representation. And sometimes it is through statute. We do know that there are lots of parents that are pulling their kids out of the public school system right now to homeschool them or to take other educational options. And I think that this is a way to help merge that gap, help restore some faith in the public education system, and just help parents feel like they have a bigger seat at the table. And I thank you. And I will stand for any questions.
Ms. Pavey, we've got a question from Senator Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Pavey, hi there. Nice to see you again.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to say one thing is that, we did pass this bill, a very good parental rights bill last year. So on the campaign trail, that wouldn't have been implemented yet. Do you think maybe some of those questions and concerns that were brought up was because parents weren't aware? I mean, we don't do a great job of getting our legislation out there and tooting our own horns that we are all for parental rights. And so do you think maybe it's just because people had not heard yet that there is a bill in place?
I do not believe so. I would echo the statements that Representative Heiner was discussing prior to me.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Pavey. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. Anyone else? Sue, streaming in this morning? Okay, I'm going to close testimony on this bill. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Boner. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of
Amendments.
quick amendments to take care of the stated concerns of some of the folks testified. Page 2, line 17, strike during school hours or, and insert including. So say including while the student is engaged in activity, and then same thing, page 3, line 11, and any other places I may have missed in the bill.
So in other words, conforming beyond that, but Sue, do you have line 17? Okay, and we're going to strike during school hours or, and replace it with the word including. Representative, does that follow? Are you following us? Okay, discussion. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That amendment passes. Senator Boner.
Page 4, line 5, after that, insert plans to and change addresses to address. And that hopefully deals with the stated concerns that, you know, apparently you can't hold an assembly less than 5 days. That's not how it reads currently, and I just like to, a little bit more wiggle room there.
Can you say that one more time?
So after that, page 4, line 5, insert plans to, and instead of addresses, insert address. So
Yes, the speaker presentation.
that plans to address sexual orientation, gender identity, and so on.
Okay, does everybody understand the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. I'll take it. That amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Further discussion.
I just have one.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on page 2, I don't think we need the end on line 20. Regardless of location, I would move to delete that and just put a period after student. I think it's explanatory without that. If it says extracurricular activity, then we understand that it could be at home or away, so it's a simple fix, I think.
So the proposed amendment is on line 20, page 2, striking the final 3 words of that line, regardless of location, and a period after the word student. Okay? Any discussion on that one? All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That amendment has passed. There was some conversation this morning about 11 and 12, that language up above there. Each school district, and we include the words in this bill, including school district personnel. Really, that's the only way that that a district can interact is through its personnel. So I'm kind of compelled that language probably doesn't belong, but I would need a proposed amendment out of somebody here. Okay, not seeing that. Anything else on the bill? Okay.
The 5-day notice, do you think we need 5 days, or could we just put in there that a reasonable, because they did
I thought
point
about 2
out
days, actually.
that, what?
I actually had 2 days possibly as an amendment, but I don't know if that's enough time.
I was just thinking not given actually just a reasonable amount of, I mean, or maybe as soon as they know, maybe something like that.
I really struggle to think this paragraph is workable, to be honest, but that's just me, and maybe we can fix that along the way or continue to work this if it goes upstairs. Yeah, that's problematic. I've got some real concerns over on page 7 when we talk about, you know, the language on lines 13 and 14. I think it just really throws a wet towel over the top of being able to teach everything from civics to social studies to government, whatever, but I'm not sure how to fix it at this point. So, Senator Schuler.
Yeah, it's interesting, the last just few days since this bill was noticed, I've heard from all 3 superintendents in my districts that I represent that are not on board with this. They feel like they've been doing what we needed done with Senate File 9, and they haven't had a chance to really even get caught up to speed on that. And I like some things in this bill. A a lot, actually. There's some things I don't think we need, but I'll probably vote no, just to kind of support those folks back there, giving them maybe a little more time to work through what we just passed last year. But if the bill goes forward, I'll do my darndest to reach out to them and find out if we can fix whatever they have their biggest concerns with. And I'll help try and, work the bill as best I can, so.
Okay, anything else, committee? Senator Bonner.
I want to support the bill. To be clear, I don't think we've had any problems in my neck of the woods, but we heard that there have been some issues with implementation. I think that this is a good way to follow up and continue the good work's already been happening. So, I haven't heard much from my neck of the woods. I do think that it's, if we implement a policy at the state level, because we do have this sort of statewide education system mandated by the courts, that's important that we ensure that everything's absolutely clear and we continue to refine policies, especially that are new and apparently are controversial in some places.
Okay, Sue, would you, Senator Jones, go ahead.
I'm really struggling with this because I feel like that parental rights bill that our good senator over here presented to us last year that we passed is a really good bill. And I'm just trying to make sure that we're not going backwards instead of forwards with this. We want to make sure that our parents are definitely included, and but I don't want to go the wrong direction. And I feel like some of these things, while we're trying to spell it out, we are actually taking away some of the rights and some of these paragraphs that were pointed out. So I am struggling with this bill a little bit.
Okay, committee, yeah, I'm struggling too, and I appreciated Ms. Clifford coming over from Fremont County and just would push back a little bit in saying that I think our teachers are busting it every day and doing a heck of a job out there. I don't think anything's changed on that front in the last many years. It's a profession that you got to love what you do, and I just think this particular bill, appreciate all the work the representative put into it. I just feel like it's a little onerous, a little top-down, very authoritative, and I think it hinders rather than helps. And there's some pieces of it that I understand and I get and can even partially support, but I won't be supporting the bill. So, Sue, let's take roll on House Bill 200.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 200 engrossed and amended. Senator Bonner.
Aye.
Senator Hicks. Oh, Senator Hicks has left an aye vote. Senator Jones.
No.
Senator Schuler.
No.
Chairman Landon.
No.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes, 3 noes.
Representative, thank you for all your efforts. Appreciate it. Have a good day over on the other side, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Representative Knapp, we finally get to you, sir. Welcome, Representative. Thanks for all your patience. You know how tough it is because you're chairing on the other side, so hard to get them all in. Take us through House Bill 280.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I know how it is. We went to 10 o'clock last night in our committee, so I just very much appreciative of hearing the bill. House Bill 280 is a constituency bill, and I've worked on this for 3 sessions now. And along the way have worked with the Attorney General's Office, Department of Corrections, and the Sheriff's Association in formulating this bill. And basically what it does is there are certain offenses that happen in our society that are more heinous and are severe enough to provide residents of and citizens of Wyoming a tool to use in protection of their families and themselves as they go into relationships, as they do things with their kids and activities. For instance, my daughter and I, she's been with me on every campaign since she was a baby. And whenever we went out to go door knocking, we would actually look at this registry offense to see that we're not knocking on a door that maybe we shouldn't. And that would have consequences in the future. So I always see this as a tool, not a punishment for people. But basically what the bill does is it takes first degree and second degree offenses, sexual offenses in Wyoming, and it puts them in a category that they're not able to apply to get off the registry. And again, we're not dealing with third degree and fourth degree offenses. We're dealing with the most serious offenses that involve either restraining, having power over somebody, and basically those offenses that I think are appropriate to not only have a lifetime listing, but not to be able to get off of that registry. So working with the Attorney General's office, basically what they did was took statute and offenses, which get very complicated, and reduce them into a more consolidated approach and put those in the proper categories so that those offenses would not be able to be off the registry. And with that, I would take questions.
So thank you, Representative. Having been on the Judiciary Committee, this is a complicated set of statutes. It really is, isn't it? And ironically, I've actually suggested a topic for our Judiciary Committee to take up this very thing, to get a look at it and make sure we've got everything in the right place. So it resonates, and appreciate all your work here. So any questions of the representative? Not saying this bill puts them all in the right place either. I appreciate the effort is what I'm saying, and it's a tough lift for sure.
Thank you.
So Representative, the only question that I've got, if the committee has none, is to just make sure that we understand, what these statutes are. First and second degree, maybe you can just reiterate for the committee real quickly what we're talking about there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first degree assaults, of course, are with the felony, and they include, I've got to get my glasses here, sorry. So those include the use of force or threat of force, and the victim is physically helpless, mentally incapacitated, and the defendant knows or reasonably knows that the victim suffers such disabilities. So that is the first degree. The second degree is by use of threat or reprisal against the victim's relatives or spouse, submission by the victim to the defendant without the option of resistance. The defendant orders or directly administers a controlled substance to a victim without the victim's consent. A victim submits to the defendant because the victim erroneously believes that the defendant is her spouse or his spouse, and the defendant is reasonably aware of this. The defendant assumes a position of authority over the victim. A defendant is an employee or worker in the county, district, or city and works in any correctional or rehabilitation facility where the victim is a resident. The accused works in elementary school, secondary school, and by reason of such employment has interactions with the victim who is enrolled in that school and is older than the victim by 4 years. The sexual contact or sexual intrusion is done on the victim by the accused, with the accused being a healthcare provider tasked with administering medical treatment and care to the victim. And finally, the accused subject, the victim of sexual contact in the process, causes seriously bodily injury, and in the instances mentioned above. So again, those are the first degree and second degree offenses. So this doesn't cover the third and fourth, where sometimes you have age differences of 3 or 4 years in those types of things, those relationships. So this doesn't catch those up. And I would also say that the Wyoming Registry is again a tool, but it doesn't violate those rights of a defendant either. It simply lists the name, the address, the nature of the offense, but it doesn't give any other information besides that. And actually, that is a crime to disseminate that information to other people, so.
Thank you for that, Representative. That helps to go over those. Thanks for that. Senator Schuler.
Yeah, I just have one question. Did you mention that you'd had the Attorney General's office look at this legislation, and they're pretty good with it? The way
Yes, at one session, we stopped at this point because they wanted to ensure that crimes from other states that were applicable also were included in this. So we included that in there, and then they helped to draft the current legislation.
So to get to the crux of it, Representative, some of these second degree do have the ability at some point to request to get off the list. If I remember the statute, and I think that's the way it works. Not all do. Some are lifetime. What this bill would do is first and second degree, you're going to be listed.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, and I've taken a pretty deep dive into this ever since being approached by a constituent. And one of the interesting things that they've found with this particular category of offenses is that similar to a serial killer, I guess you would say, the longer the term goes with these offenses, the more likely the recidivism rate. And it's a very high recidivism rate, up to almost 20%. And those are the folks that get caught again. And so I think it's important, again, not as a punishment, but as a tool for the rest of us, and for those moms out there that want to enter into another relationship and maybe have children as well. So I think it's very important for us to shine light on that.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Anything, committee? Okay, it doesn't look like anyone in the room is wanting to testify on this bill. So we do have, I think, one who wants to testify, and Mr. Hanson is on the line. I have agreed to help him take his issue forward into discussions of interim topics. Honestly, we are so short on time. I think, Mr. Hanson, I'm going to join you a little bit later and represent with you the issues that you've got at a discussion for interim topics, and hopefully we can get on the radar screen. I do think we have a couple of these misplaced, and been working with Mr. Hanson on that. So we are so short of time. I'm sorry we're not going to be able to take testimony this morning. We want to try to get this bill worked. So I'm going to close public testimony on this. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill?
Yeah.
Moved by Senator Boner. Discussion. This is a white bill. We don't get very many white bills.
No changes.
I would just say, just as by way of discussion, I'll probably support this up to the floor. But given the fact that I'm proposing that we take a hard look at this at the committee level, I'm still hopeful on that. Whether this bill goes through or not, Representative, I think our colleagues really should look at that whole chunk of statutes. So thank you for your work and your patience. Appreciate it. Let's take roll on House Bill 280. Sue, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 280. Senator Boner?
Aye.
Senator Hicks has left an aye vote. Senator Jones?
Aye.
Senator Schuler?
Aye.
Chairman Landon?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes.
Sue, would you please, on that third bill, Senator Hicks was unable to hear any of the testimony, so I think I'm just going to excuse him for that vote, please. And, okay, so 280 has passed the committee, and it will go to the state senate up on the chamber floor. And thank you, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you very much. I
Look
appreciate
forward
it.
to the months ahead working with you on corporations. So,
Absolutely.
all righty, thanks.